Hey everybody, Orange Podcast Bad. This is the second part in a series called I Am the Science, where we're exploring all things I Am the Science. Ironically, we're also talking about a guy who said he was the science, and if you're attacking science, you're really attacking this small, fragile man. We got JC.
Uh-huh.
We're seeing if we can get someone else to join us. They may be able to, they may not. Got some technical issues. But what's up, JC?
The highest paid federal employee in the workforce, higher than the president, and of course he takes every penny of salary, and he also takes every penny of royalties, which was a unique way that the FDA and the NIAID and all those wonderful alphabet agencies involved with health figured out how to get extra budgetary authority by doing the bidding of the pharmaceutical companies and sharing the loot. And strangely enough, in all the congressional testimony that's been taken, and there's been a bunch, and our buddy Little Rand Paul has been very active in questioning him and not doing much else. We seem to get to that moment where it's time for him to tell us how much loot is available through those royalties, and that seems to be like Pentagon type secrets in terms of weapon systems and everything else. And yet, this individual's stock portfolio and holdings went from, a healthy, what, million and a half to 10.5 million in 3 years during
Well,
the
I thought
COVID
it was
situation.
1 year. I thought it was at three. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, Pfizer declared $100 billion profit in 2022, so there was a lot to go around with all the forced purchase and all the subsidies that are now so controversial.
Well,
Yeah.
and I know look. I know he's been around since the Earth was young, but these royalties that they have worked up through the NIAID, NIH, FDA, CDC, their lifetime. I mean,
Yes, they are.
lifetime, right? So isn't it be doesn't that, if you look at that, doesn't that stifle competition? Because you go, I want to have them have that 20-year program. I don't want any other competition because I wouldn't get royalties from competition producing a similar drug.
If you had that, you might be tempted to tell someone who creates a vaccine that's under emergency use authorization that they don't need to tell you anything about their tests for 75 years. Because of
Yeah.
course you want it to go on. I mean, once the train leaves the station and the gravy starts flowing, I mean, interrupting that becomes a big deal. And you, and this is the look, folks. This is the same dynamic that's going on in the states right now. Indiana um, is making an effort, and I know this is not about Dr. Science, but in a way it is making an effort to redistrict and get a 9-0 congressional majority or 8-0, whatever it is. And it, for whatever, just some odd reason, the special session hasn't been called yet. And that the February 25th is the deadline for declaring for Congress. So that's, you know, 3 months and 3 weeks away. So getting a new district drawn is urgent if that's what you're going to do. And the idea that you're just not able to call a special session. And someone says, well, maybe we don't have the votes. Well, and all MAGA conservatives would say, why wouldn't you have the votes? Well, because Indiana's historically been a red state, like Missouri, like Texas, like Georgia, Boss Hogs, Georgia. And there's all these business deals and there's all this loot and there's all these things that require a 5 to 10 year runway for the total payout. And the folks with their their snouts in the trough are very loath to change conditions surrounding the trough.
Yes. And that trough currently being Eli Lilly and big data centers.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's one neighborhood, Franklin Township, I believe it was, which should be like the southeast side of Indianapolis. Got
Yes.
a successful withdrawal of a Google data center. And we've all been careful in telling our Hoosier friends, you got that one, but trust me, Google's coming back. They'll find another way.
They will.
Congratulations, keep up the fight. Good job, but they're not giving up on these data centers, and they'll just drop it in a neighborhood behind you that's not in your district.
Thomas Jefferson warned us that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance.
Yes.
And folks, when you have a $7 trillion spending budget, all right, there's a lot of snouts in the trough, and there's a lot of momentum for doing absolutely nothing and just funding it. And this is the legacy of the Obamazation of the federal government. Because don't get us wrong, neither Sean or I is a fan of George W. Bush. But back in the double O's, we still did pass some spending bills, and we had some reconciliation with the Senate, and that provided a certain tether on this. But the last actual spending budget that we passed by regular order, as
Yes.
they call it, was somewhere a little south of 3 trillion, and we're now at 7 trillion.
Yep. And that was in 1996 under Slick Willie. And obviously, he had a Republican House and a mostly Republican Senate. But but he went along with it. He didn't fight it the way
I do
Obama
now.
fought it. And then I remember with Obama, for we're in a government shutdown now. Obama shut the
Are
government
we?
down
Oh yeah,
so that
that's
he
right.
could
That's right.
cram
That's right. We are.
Obamacare down the throats of the American people. And he said, I will not reopen this government until you pass the ACA.
And does anyone remember when it finally passed the Senate? The Senate that won't even do without a 4-day weekend. It passed on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
That's how determined they were to smash this thing through. And we're dealing with it right now. And I'm wondering if the president, God love him, he's got a lot going on, okay? But if the president is going to finally just state the obvious, which is, look, we need to repeal Obamacare. I mean,
I
not
think
just
that's part of the deal, right? So, also with the Democrats, you're saying, whatever Republicans are, all the babies are going to die, and other. It's convoluted, but here's what the Democrats, when they got this and forced it through with the government shutdown under Obama, they had all this funding in it that was set to expire this year. They
right.
were aware of it. They knew this was coming, and them trying to blame it on Republicans now is just hilarious. The Republicans are like, no, we're just not going to extend it. We're just going to let all of this funding expire,
Let it die.
basically killing the ACA and forcing competition back into the healthcare insurance market because ACA, remember all those small health insurance providers all over the country that did small and medium sized businesses before ACA?
Yeah, I
Uh,
do.
yeah, what happened to them after the ACA?
They're gone.
Gone, gone, right?
No, the individual market for insurance was destroyed for health insurance.
Absolutely.
It used to be like the same way you buy an individual life insurance policy, the same way you buy, and the internet made it much easier because you could just get on something like Select Quote and compare what the rates were and make your pick depending on what you needed, whether it was major medical or whatever. But that's all been absolutely
Well,
obliterated.
what happened to right? It's gone. What happened to the catastrophic only? Like, if I just have
Yeah.
a cold or flu, why can't I just go pay cash? Why do I have to pay 900 or $1,500 a month out of pocket when all I want is catastrophic, meaning hospitalization?
Back in the 90s, the ancient times,
I know. God.
that was the first time that I ever heard a policy proposal, and for the life of me, it was from one of those thousands of think tanks that I wasted so many dollars contributing to.
Sure.
They they the Congress authorized a program called the Medical Savings Account,
Mhm.
and there's nothing on earth that made more sense than that. And companies that used that absolutely killed it on health insurance and held healthcare increases down to the low single digits, if at all, and sometimes they even went down. The point being that, like a flexible spending account, which obviously the industry loves because you have to spend it to do it again the next year or you lose it. So it's forced demand, and that's the when you look at the nature of government purchase, forced buying is the driver of all debt, because no matter how useless it is, whether you need it or not, whether you need a new pair of glasses, whatever you need, if it qualifies under that program, oh yeah, you got this debit card and it's loaded with qualifying purchases. So you can go and spend that money. And then next year you can re up for another 3,000 or whatever it is. And you got to spend all that too. But if you have those kind of bills and those copays and that, it's really a great thing because it's tax free and all the rest of that. So it doesn't count as compensation. The medical savings account turned that on its head, because that which you didn't use, you could keep, and it was tax free,
Yep.
like all health insurance, which that shouldn't be the case either. But that's another discussion involving Franklin Roosevelt and World War II and why employee benefits were not taxed. Okay, we can do that on another show, and I'm not saying we won't, but you would invert the incentives, and all of a sudden you turn all these grandmas and these people that shop, like the some of the immigrant traders and all the rest of those people, calling 15 places to get an MRI and comparing prices. And places would be going out of business if their price was too high. And other people, with all the fat that's involved in those tests, would, of course, lower their price in response to shopping behavior. Anytime that shopping is taken out of it, then you don't have a market. You just have a grift.
Which is exactly what the ACA did. It
Yes.
eliminated all competition. It told you you can only go to this specific provider for these specific services. You can only go to this specific pharmacy. I do have an anecdotal note on the switchover from health savings accounts to flexible spending. The very first year when that happened to people, I will tell you, our shelves went empty in December of qualified items,
Mhm.
Neosporin, aspirin, back patches, because they're like, I've got $1,800. What am I supposed to do? I'm not going to just
Stool.
lose it. And
Of
I
course, the all-important
and we
stool
of course
softener.
we of
Right.
course accommodated all their needs and took the money, but that being said, we were also thinking, "This shit's all gonna expire before you use it anyways. You just got
Right.
screwed by your flexible spending account, and you should demand your employer go back to the health savings account."
That's right. But guess what? The industry doesn't like the medical savings account because they don't want shopping pressure. What they want is forced purchase.
Yep.
And that makes demand inexhaustible, which is what they like, because it pads the balance sheet for quarterly earnings. Sorry, that's just how it
If
is.
you're pay it is a subscription, and if you're paying a subscription, they have a guaranteed revenue stream that they can count on, and now they can leverage that for very low interest loans to make investments off of that revenue stream. That's
Yeah,
right, and I don't know if Obama quite understood how bad he was gonna make it, but, like, we all saw it. We're like, "Holy crap,"
I'm
and we
sure
were all screaming about it, right?
I'm sure he didn't care.
I know.
But the point being that he wanted the headlines and the schmaltz of delivering, and if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, the biggest lie ever told.
Well,
And guess what? You know, another thing that happened during that time that people forget is everybody was anticipating the earthquake and the disruptive force of the employer mandate, because the individual mandate was uh, enacted immediately, destroying the private insurance market. But the employer mandate was set to go the next year, and he walked up to the podium in the East Room and said, "Yeah, we're going to put that off a year." So I said, "Huh?
uh-huh.
Is somebody going to pass a bill?" This is Obama. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Well, wait, so I'm gonna get fined on my taxes, but my employer doesn't have to provide an available choice for a plan for me. Is that what you're telling me, Barack?
that's what you're telling me. The populist left guy uh, showed himself to be a Sanders. That's exactly what happened. It's all just about power and control.
And
With his, go ahead.
what is it with Democrats in healthcare and mandates?
Fort Purchase.
'Cause you had that with ACA, you had that with the, companies over 100,000. He's put the Department of Labor in charge of making sure people take, vaccines. Well,
Ah,
what the hell does the Department of Labor have to do with health?
they were even going to try to do it under OSHA. You remember that?
Yeah, they tried and they failed. They
Right.
tried.
They
Eventually,
try
they got a DOL mandate through.
yeah, they try everything. I mean, I'll send you a graphic, Sean, of what actually happened when they got that vaccine mandate in place. It's not something you've seen on the evening news, but all of the spikes in the curve of the young employed people that died, and and you know our guest tonight, who probably doesn't look like he's making it, but he'll make it next time,
Sure.
uh, is suffering from the very same things that killed those people. His reaction just wasn't as severe, but he's damaged, and his health has been taken. And this is a 50-something-year-old man. I
Right.
mean, yeah, owns his own business, got 4 kids. Uh, he's a provider. Yeah,
Right, but
terrific.
and still today, there's really no recourse for this.
No,
Because they legislated, right, immunity, to, the pharmacy companies on this.
but Sean, even worse than that. They doubled down. They diddled with the regulations, and this is pure doctor science right here. They diddled with the regulations, and they had that garbage. I'm being polite, called remdesivir, and the brand name is Veklury. And my little patriot nurse, who we hope to have on also at some point, once she gets over her current distemper associated with the deal Trump cut with Pfizer. Uh, she was the first to blow the whistle on the fact that she was in a hospital. She was a emergency room nurse, and she caught wind of the fact that if they were using remdesivir on a COVID patient, that the entire hospital charge master was increased by a 22% bonus.
It's
When
insane.
you think about the entirety of your hospital bill, and then you add a 22% surcharge on it for using this one medication, how do you think the Pharmacy and Therapeutics Committee are going to react to that? Or is their protocol going to include that medication? Well, yeah, of course. And it's on EUA, so it's fine. Now, Did anybody look into the history of this thing that they tried to use it for Ebola? And it killed people.
Right.
And it had the same reaction this time too. And Dr. Science doesn't want to talk about this, but this is what happened, and I have it from eyewitnesses. I guarantee you there are listeners with us tonight who experienced this for themselves or for a family member. You start having some symptoms and you think, oh, wait a minute, this isn't too good. I might have it, whatever. And you go to the ER and they go, yeah, you're positive, but it's not that bad. You know, let's go home and try to fight it off. Here's some cough syrup. Here's this, here's that. All right. If it starts to get into your chest, come back. And 5 days later, here they come. All right. And oh man, once you're there, then it's time for the remdesivir and the Veklury IV. And you get a few days of that stuff in you. If you're an older person, like I am now, and your kidney function starts to fail because it is nephrotoxic. Nephrology is the study of kidneys. Nephrotoxic means that this medication is bad news for the two main organs, your kidneys, that filter the excrement out of your system and allow you to
Hmm.
urinate. Okay? This is what we're talking about. This is the body's janitor. And by using remdesivir IV, you're disabling the body's janitorial system. So you aren't eliminating as much fluid as you did before. Remember, you've got the infection. And when your kidneys don't eliminate sufficient water, what happens? Well, there's places that don't have any water in them that suddenly do, like your lungs. Okay? And then you start to have a little difficulty breathing, and then oh, yeah, you've got COVID pneumonia. Here's the ventilator. And the next call is to the hearse.
Yes. And I was watching this. This is still during a time, right, where you can't really talk about any of this on the internet. We now can talk about, at least scientifically, we can bring up facts like this. When I first started seeing this, and that it was the guidance out of the NIH and the NIAID, and I was like, what are we doing to people? What are we
What are we
doing? Why aren't we there's other things that are known to at least alleviate symptoms, which would keep you off of ventilator, which would keep you off of some of these other things. Why aren't we using those? And I went, "Oh, yeah, the EUA." And, wait, there was a quote somewhere somebody said about Fauci during the AIDS, pandemic they said about Fauci, "Find what works and stops it."
right?
Find what works and
Right.
stop it so that we can do the other thing.
And Trump being Trump caught hold of that French study that was published. Dr. Raouf, I think his name doesn't matter. You probably can't find it anymore. Google's probably gotten rid of it. But it talked about the combination of hydroxychloroquine and Z-Pak and dexamethasone. Now, from a clinical standpoint, what that stuff did, and the reason COVID was nasty was because most viruses just run their course.
Mhm.
But with as virulent as COVID was, especially COVID alpha, the original COVID, the one that I had, it it absolutely would make you vulnerable to bacterial infection because of the damage the virus was doing. And so to be able to continue breathing, you needed to do something that you don't normally do when you have an infection, and that's take a steroid. And that's where dexamethasone comes in.
Okay.
And right, in a trauma center, I mean, heavy pharmacology tonight, in a trauma center, You go to a trauma center, if you've been in an auto accident or something like that, you've got trauma and you've got swelling, the first thing they do is give you a massive steroid shot. And the reason is not that steroids are wonderful for you, but at that point you're in crisis and you need to reduce the inflammation. And dexamethasone is one of the most potent oral steroids we have, and it can counteract the cytokine storm in your lungs of COVID and reopen your alveoli, which are the little air sacs, and give you time to get rid of both infections. And then the azithromycin took out the bacteria that had been opportunistic enough to invade, and your body's immune system took care of the virus because the hydroxychloroquine opened your cells to the zinc, which we've talked about before.
Yep.
That's why that was the perfect cocktail. Truly, the pandemic would have lasted 3 months if we'd have done that in
Sure.
the wholesale in the United States. Now, I want all of you out there tonight that are listening to this, think about the amount of BS you got about hydroxychloroquine and then ivermectin. It resounds to this day. In fact,
Still,
it's almost like it's on a black market. You're almost
there's still
supposed to talk.
people that literally believe that it's some sort of horse, paste or goo, like, that it's
Right.
not for human consumption.
And what it does is, if you're someone who hasn't had zinc supplements, or you don't have a great diet, or you're fat, or any of those other comorbidities that we used to talk about with
Yep.
COVID that made you more vulnerable, you don't have sufficient zinc stores in a frame that big to fight off this virus on your own. So
Sure.
you need some help. In the same way that insulin opens human cells for sugar and allows it to get in, zinc has the same problem getting in because it's also polar. Hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin both are what's known as ionophores, and they open a pathway for zinc to flow freely into cells. Once the respiratory viruses, and folks, this is all respiratory viruses, once they get a hold of zinc, it's over. Okay? Because they confuse zinc with something the virus needs to replicate itself. They incorporate it into the next virus that they're trying to create, and it's over. The same way Rachel Maddow described the shot. Oh, the COVID ends. You take the shot, it's over. No, you get the zinc into your cells and it's over. All right? Every time, in every respiratory virus. I haven't sniffled since 2019 because I take zinc and vitamin D and that stuff every single day like a religion. That's
Sure.
why I seem so youthful. Anyway.
Yeah. Wait, well, if you're watching the podcast and not listening in audio format, you'll see we're both old as shit.
Yeah, older than dirt. I earned all these, Sean. I
Ah,
earned I
you
earned them all. Yeah.
oh, man,
Two marriages. Yeah, yeah, I
I
earned them all.
I'm right there with you, brother. I earned them. I earned all of it. Oh, Jesus. So, well, that brings me,
But Sean, he did the same. Let me rewind for you. He did the same thing with AIDS.
that's what I was saying. So azithromycin, I believe AZT is the drug code, in AIDS.
AZT and AZ are a little bit different. Azithromycin is an antibiotic. AZT was an antiretroviral, so it's
Okay,
actually considered an antiviral. Okay.
but he still held that up,
Oh hell yeah!
all right, because he it worked.
Right, and
It
the one
literally
he
worked,
really,
and so
the
he's
one he
like,
really,
"We can't use this."
the similarity here was the trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole, which is very, very good for difficult ear infections.
Mhm.
Okay. In
Yep.
fact, if you take a 2-week course of that, It can knock out the nastiest ear infection that you've had, and you've got 60% hearing loss in your ear or something like that. But trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole is excellent for that. Well, in AIDS, the syndrome that killed you was the pneumonia associated with Kaposi sarcoma. And he blocked the use of Bactrim, Septra, which is the generic name is trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole. He blocked the use of that medication from people who desperately needed it so they could run the grift with what they had approved. It's the same formula. It's disgusting.
Right, and during this era, right, 'cause I went back and took a look just to see what the similarities and if there was any differences in how he treated, the AIDS epidemic versus the COVID pandemic, and there wasn't a lot of differences, and what you saw was the same type of thing as the ultra rich were able to go around his recommendations and get health care. Everybody else was screwed
Mm,
until he got whatever his plan was implemented years and years later that actually provided some relief, and now we know you can bring the HIV virus down to a point of undetectable in people. There's other things that I know I don't have much information on this, but just look at hepatitis C, right? Where it was deadly 20 years ago. Now you can cure it. You can wipe it off the map. But it's people like I'm not blaming Hep C on I am the science, but I'm blaming the industry on there was ways to help people and you held it up on purpose,
more
which
money.
we, us humans, consider that. We're like, that's evil. And it was all about money. It's all
All
about
about
money.
money. Now, let me confess, and this is a personal anecdote. I worked for Merck at at the time when this was going on. And I had AIDS advocates in my office talking about AIDS drug assistance programs in different states, which is what it was really all about. That's where the money was getting the feds spigot opened up to help people suffering with AIDS with the most expensive things. So if you were going to use things like Bactrim, which was already generic for the pneumonia, or you were going to use effective things like the analog of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine back then to take care of some of these difficult things. But they held out for, well, we want the AIDS vaccine, or we want the silver bullet, or this is a triple combo, whatever that costs $1,000 a day. And Shaun, back then, I'm a true confession, folks. I sound like a grizzled veteran now, the curmudgeon who's had enough of this crap. And that's exactly what I am now. But in the 90s, I was in awe. Man, look, we're doing this. Oh,
Is there ever in the history, even in the future, say we live another 3,000 years as humans, right? Going to
yeah.
be a one size fits all silver bullet to a specific health problem? Because
No.
humans are all biologically a little bit different.
And those differences made manifest uh, provide pathways for treatment. I mean, even now, I used to read about this stuff back when I listened to the talk radio back then. There are antihypertensives that are much more effective for African Americans than they are for whites. But you can't talk about it
And
because
then,
it
well,
means
God, it just makes you want to get red in the face and say a bunch of shit we can't say on here.
Shaun, am I not red in the face already? I mean, you've got me furious here. I think about this. And not that I want anybody out there to sympathize with me. I mean, my career is basically over. This was my life's work, and
Yep.
it sickens me that 80% of what I was dispensing was poison. These ADHD drugs, these SSRIs,
SSRIs.
the doping of America. I mean, even the friggin' OxyContin. I didn't dispense that much of that, but what the Sacklers I mean, this is just awful. And everyone go, oh, the MIC, the military industrial complex. Well, at least there's some utility for that. The biopharmaceutical complex just wants to make us all sick so they can
The
treat us.
the other
Every,
the other part, and I've explained this many times, basically since Elon unlocked free speech on X, we're gonna test YouTube real quick here. They claim they're gonna
I think we
change,
already have. Yeah.
but I'm gonna test it here. Because we have a guy who's an expert in the military industrial complex, being Paul. He spent most of his life in law enforcement or in he was active duty, and then he was also he's a a lifelong private military contractor. And
Still,
we
yeah.
discuss what gain of function is. And again, I'll ask you, what's Agent Orange? Isn't it a virus?
Yeah. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
viral. Yeah, yeah. It's a
And
viral
so
precursor,
when you
right?
talk about gain of function, what's like if for people that don't understand that the claim that Dr. I am the science and many others, he's not the only one say is that well we have to create the next pandemic in a lab so we can fight that if it ever happened in the real world. No, no, no. What they were doing, and it was banned. It was internationally banned, and we were still doing it. Other countries still do it too. Don't let them fool you. Is gain of function is biological warfare.
Yes.
It, it is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is. Which is why even Obama said when he found out we were still doing gain of function on a COVID like SARS virus in North
Uh-huh.
Carolina, he looked at Dr. Fauci and said, "Get that shit off my continent." So he moved it to Ukraine, to Taiwan, and to China.
Kinda. One of the main beneficiaries of the Maidan revolution in Ukraine. So you can tie it all together. The MIC, the CIA wanted to get control of the Russian biolabs, and they did.
Yeah.
They did. And a lot of the nonsense went on there, a lot of the nonsense that you'll never hear anything about. Or you can suspect, but it always ends up once you find out, it's always worse than what you thought.
This isn't the show, but maybe we'll do a show. I can tie a lot of this into Hunter Biden and his activities inside of Ukraine too. But
My god.
let's let's
Every single country you mentioned was, Hunter Biden was on the board of directors or representing someone, or he's in with the biggest spy master or whatever it is. It's
and
all on the
Joe Biden literally holding up or bribing them with
yeah,
international aid funding, unless they fired the prosecutors that were investigating his son in those countries.
right. But a president gets impeached for asking about, "Hey, Hunter Biden's been over there. We might wanna look into that." I mean, folks, seriously, it would make you laugh if it wasn't so infuriating.
That's why I'm laughing because I've had the time because I've already had the conversations. I've had the time to process it. So now when I look at it, I see the comedy in all of it, and when they're outraged at the orange guy for whatever he says. It doesn't matter
And
what
they
he
can't
says.
they
They're
can't
outraged.
run
I laugh at it because all of the accusations they're making is
for
about
what they did,
it's
for
the
what they did.
Biden cartel. They're literally saying, like, "The Biden cartel did all this. Let's blame Trump."
I mean, even today, they're blaming him for the
Yeah.
shutdown. Yeah. Now, what I asked Mark Mitchell if he would do is, will you pull the shutdown? I mean, I will admit that the Republicans and Trump are responsible for the shutdown, but I support it. I would like the shutdown to go on in perpetuity. I never want the government to reopen.
I think you're gonna get at least a month. Schumer's not gonna give up on this thing. They now they're into bullying tactics where they're going and chasing down House members, with somebody recording on a phone. to publicly shame them on their social media
Or you got
accounts.
Ted Lieu riding the Wedway People Mover in Washington
Dude,
looking
he
for
posted
Republicans.
this super cringe video today where he went and opened up what looked like a dog door in the halls of the side of the house, and he goes, "Nope, they're not in there. The Republicans went home. They're unwilling to negotiate." And I will tell you, I've gotten some engagement off of it. I just respond to these senators and I say, there is a bipartisan. You say you want bipartisan, meaning Democrats voted for it too. House bill that was sent to you. You could
Right.
simply just pass it.
That's it. And you only need 4 more votes to do it, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, and that's because one of our senators is going to vote against it anyways. Our senators, the
Yeah, yeah.
libertarian from
No, isn't he
Kentucky.
isn't he isn't he the Massey's friend, that guy?
Uh huh. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, a
Well,
little short guy, right?
They
Yeah.
they love to claim they're libertarian, but why don't they run as libertarians? Because they couldn't win.
Can't win.
They wouldn't win. They win because Kentucky's mostly outside of, right, a couple of blue cities, it's super red.
It's
That's
MAGA.
that's why they run as Republicans. If they ran as libertarians, nobody would they would lose their ass. They'd get 5% of the vote.
I wanna revisit a comment that you made because it was in I mean, I remember the feeling of relief that I had when Mueller testified and he was non compos menace just like Biden. I mean, his testimony hurt them tremendously. And, Trump put up the Game of Thrones thing, that afternoon. Game over, exonerated. The entire Mueller witch hunt came to an end. That crap with Vindman and Charmella started the next week.
Yeah.
They didn't even give him a week to relax or sleep. We were straight on into impeachment one. And then you had these people in the media sitting there talking about Adam Schiff's oratory in the well of the Senate as an impeachment manager, and saying it's going to go down like Clarence Darrow, or and I'm like, what? I sorry, I don't want to swear, but what are you watching? I'm watching kabuki theater. There's no chance that this is going to work.
Right. Dude, it's wild to me the way that people actually fall for it and fall for the theater, fall for the language that's being used. It's wild to me, and especially now that we're allowed to use social media again. Thank you,
Yeah,
Elon. Thank you, Chris. I believe Chris is the
yeah.
CEO of Rumble.
He's a
Um,
mensch. The idea that you can do video is a big deal.
oh, it's huge. Dude,
Yeah.
if never mind, I'm not going to make that comment. Well, we're
That's all right.
broadcasting. We're
Oh, there's been a whole
broadcasting.
lot. There's been a whole lot that I haven't said, but anyway, go ahead.
We're broadcasting on their specific platform right now, so I'll leave them alone.
Right.
And don't worry, I've got plenty to say about it. But the idea of free speech over there, it's a wait and see for me. We'll find out if the channel gets blocked, it gets blocked. But we're doing our best to at least present to you truthful content. Well, we have some commentary. Of course, we have our own thoughts. But this theater that you talk about, when I see the, like I said today, what was the theme of today on X? It was old senators, super old, walking on the house side of the state building, the people's building, all going, "Oh, the Republicans went on vacation. They're not willing to negotiate." And you just got, there's people that totally believe it, and you go,
You
"Oh
would say,
my
you would
god.
say,
Oh my god."
guys, guys, the 13 spending bills haven't been passed for 20 years. You guys took 6 weeks off in August and you may have passed 3 of the 13 spending bills, maybe, but if you did, it was only because you were bored and had nothing else to do. Everything sets up shutdown theater, which is what we're in right now. And it's the idea that we're going to ram this through, and because we're going to scare everybody that the government's going to shut down. And and we can build up the pressure with
And
the
memory
media.
short.
Yeah,
Many people don't remember the Obama shutdown. I do. I lived through it. I was working for a federally funded agency at the time.
yeah.
By the way, we all still went to work and we all got paid.
Imagine that. I can't
Weird.
believe it. Do you
But
ever
but
wonder
Schumer
why?
says they're not getting paid. Now, are there certain things that don't get paid? I'm not saying no to that. I'm saying government shutdowns are all fear theater. Always have been fear theater. And Trump's in his last term. He can't run again. Trump 2028, of course. I'll probably buy the hat. He can't run again. He doesn't give a shit, Schumer. You're screwed. You're screwed.
And the last time the Democrats backed down in a government shutdown was Schumer backing down over the subject of illegal aliens. It was about DACA, and Schumer said, "Oh, I'll own this one," and it went on the weekend, and then and then Schumer capitulated. And I fully expect that's what's going to happen this time too. Although, the elected Republicans are very good at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
I think that's true, but I think that Mike Johnson, by doing pro forma sessions and keeping the House closed, so that they can't F themselves, because they
Right.
all Republicans always F themselves. And I think this is strategically Mike Johnson at his best. And I've felt Mike Johnson's been pretty weak in the past. I think strategically this is him at his best. He's just going to keep the House at home and do pro formas every day. He'll open up the House for 30 minutes and then close it down, right? So that way they can't screw themselves.
Exactly.
Because
And the fact is, the one who's most vocal right now is MTG, and she's always a bit of a live wire. Is that a nice way to put it? But going on about the subsidies and all that, and I like, sweetheart, would you think a little bigger? The reason the subsidies exist is the same reason that they want to stick 1.5 trillion into a 7-week spending bill.
right,
That is so just off the wall nuts that it shouldn't even be considered. You realize 1.5 trillion in 7 weeks.
that's what people aren't getting. And again, people are unaware of this. Listen, you can send. I tell you what. Or the Twitter link of this live podcast, you can send it to people who are not on Twitter. They don't have to have an account. And they need to hear just this. It's a 7-week spending bill that they want to put $1.5 trillion worth of spending for illegals into for 7 weeks.
Wait,
Send them this podcast, send them this live link, bookmark it right now, and send it to your liberal friends. That is 1000% correct and factual.
yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely insane when you think about the entire yearly debt deficit of the United States in what 2002 was less than what they want to dump in there for 7 weeks.
Yeah. Well, like their language is. I've made this observation a couple times to people over the last week. Their messaging, Democrats are normally spot on in winning messaging wars. They've
Yeah,
lost this one because they've Maxine Waters. Well, yeah, we want health care for everybody. Of course, we want health care for illegals, right? And then, like, other people have made awful slips in their messaging. And it's true. That's when you go, all right, blame it on Trump, blame it on Mike Johnson. But we know what you're trying to do. It's obvious to more people now that you want to fund healthcare for what's called a parolee, which is an illegal alien.
And let's talk about what this all comes down to. It comes down to money, and it comes down to large employers offloading healthcare responsibility from
To the
themselves
government.
to taxpayers. That's exactly what this is about. In fact, we can tie this together with the whole green card scam with H-1B, which is the same thing, where an Indian engineer makes 40,000, an American software engineer makes 150, and but you can get a whole hotel of Indian engineers and put them through 6 weeks of training and plug them into a high tech firm and pay them nothing for 5 years, and they're happy to take it. They can't leave because they're locked into the job once they work the program. And at the end of the rainbow is a green card, which is underwritten by Sean Stromberger, myself, and the rest of you.
Yep.
That's the Larry Fink grift, and the whole tech mountain of money that the big boys and the lords of easy money take home comes down to just that: hitting our DEI quota with foreign nationals who bump American kids out of jobs, and you pick up the tab for their health care as well as chain migration for their families, and then you wonder why we'd be a little bit upset. Okay?
You know what? What's
It's
also
pretty-
funny about that is it contradicts a lot of the government, whether it was through affirmative action or now DEI or whatever they're changing it to now to avoid persecution from the Trump administration.
Of course.
Indians are not a protected minority class, right? African
No.
Americans are, disabled veterans are, women are. Indians are not in a protected class, but they get, because of these programs, they get protected class benefits.
Right. But for DEI, they count as people of color to fill out the quotas at those organizations.
Right, but with the caveat that they're not.
I know. But
they're
everybody
not they're not they're
okay,
not African.
I know. But
And
Sean,
Africans are a protected class of citizen, and I don't personally want to stop that. I have no problem with that. That's not what I'm attacking. I'm attacking our visa system for employment that takes jobs that maybe an African should have got, or maybe I should have got it.
all right. Keep in mind that this is the same government that when it calculates income statistics, Hispanics are considered people of color. They're non-white. When it comes to crime statistics, federal crimes, those same Hispanics are considered white. So the criminal behavior gap seems much smaller than it otherwise would if you just evaluated Caucasians, where white America is Switzerland. Sorry, not sorry. They own guns, we own guns. We are law abiding. All right? But the government counts it both ways, just like they're doing with the H-1B. Same thing. They are shameless about this when money's at stake. And there's another example which goes back to Dr. Science. How in the hell did we ever end up spending this much money on healthcare? Easy. FDR gave permission to the IRS to count health employer provided health insurance as not taxable compensations, tax exempt, so they could recruit better people during the war
Mhm.
and get a better grade of employee. Well, that distortion is still in the system, and it's wrecked everything, because back in the days when union feather bedding was going on and they got all those contracts, it was always much cheaper for the big employers to give an extra dollar of health care than an extra dollar of wages, because you didn't have to pay FICA, you didn't have to pay state unemployment, you didn't have to go through all the rest of the crap. A dollar of healthcare was a full dollar because it was tax free. So the government doesn't mind winking at the idea that, oh, these people really aren't a protected class, but you've got enough jelly beans in this jar. And they let them get away with it because it's what everything is about. It's about power and money.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's about
I
power
mean,
and money.
I didn't intend to even go there, but that's where the original distortion in healthcare started.
Yes. Yeah, 'cause obviously there's endless amounts of stuff to talk to that all ties into
There's,
this, so
there's
it all
another
ties into
show in there
healthcare.
too.
It
There's
all
another show in there.
there's so many shows in this series, and some of them we're actually probably gonna be like this one, where we're just setting things up for you about how the government works so that you can
Or dozens.
understand, well, or doesn't work, right? But so that you can understand how we got to a place where Dr. I am the science became the most powerful person on the planet for about a year.
And how he was allowed to
Wildly
turn
profit off it.
wildly profit and tie everyone's hands while we were damaged and killed
Yes.
in the process. We can't leave that out. I've said to Shaun before, and I don't think it's really hyperbole. We didn't just get the Nazi rocket scientists when in Operation Paperclip. We got their doctors too, and they're still here. And medical
Yeah.
freedom is the issue. And man, you talk about emotion. Look at the hearings that Kennedy is involved in. Oh my God!
You and I think it was either on a comment on a X thread. I think it was a comment. It might have been a text message. We were just having a brief. We have a lot of fun on X. If you follow our X profile, so you'll
Yes, we
find
do.
it, we are just as cynical here, probably more cynical
More,
when we
yeah.
post on X, right? And I can't remember what it was that you said. It was something about the funding, and I said. You know, I remember I actually laughed out loud at my phone because it was so sarcastic, but so true at the same time of something that you had responded to me on. And I think I just typed back in Agent Orange.
Yeah.
It's all
There's
government funded. It's all government funded. That's the point of when I say Agent Orange, right? Which is to round out what my thought process was, is biowarfare internationally has been outlawed since the 80s, and we're
oh, yeah,
still
of
doing it. All
course we
countries are
are.
still doing it for all the wrong reasons because we don't necessarily use it in a drop it on somebody in a battle warfare. We're doing a different type of warfare now.
Well, okay, and unfortunately, what Dr. Science did was he allowed that warfare to be turned on American citizens, and that's the reason that everybody's so exercised about it. I mean, if you
Yep.
thought that that stuff was just going to be used on foreign enemies, and I mean, you could have the same attitude that I've got about the Ukraine thing. I mean, if Europe's going to dip into their reserves and pay for the weapons, okay, I'm
Have
America
fun.
first. I'm not going to worry about it. I mean, you're going to turn Ukraine into the first African nation in Europe, and that. What can I do about it? I can't do anything about it. But the point is, Obama's program of weaponizing the bureaucracy against citizens. Dr. Science was all too willing to tie into that grift and weaponize medical care against
Yes.
American citizens. And that's what he did. He is an arch villain. These were crimes against humanity, and he absolutely should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
I was telling my mom a couple nights ago, I had dinner with her, and I said, I don't know if you'll get to see it, but I hope you do, mom. I think eventually when all the information comes out, and he won't be alive, he's in his 80s. He's old.
Oh no, he's
He's
going to get
gonna
away.
go
He's going to
he's
get away.
gonna go down as the most evil person on the planet in the what century, in 21st century. Like, so yet, the century
Yeah,
before that,
listen, it
the
was
the century
definitely
before
some
that, let me make this correlation. The century before that, right, would have been Adolf Hitler.
and
You're gonna
Stalin,
find you're gonna or Joseph Stalin. You could either
Mao, yeah,
eh,
Mao, yeah.
well, I think history will look at it as Hitler, but to put those 3 are the top candidates. I think you're gonna look at,
Tough
Anthony the Science.
science.
You're gonna look at the science as the 30 years from now or for what once
The person most responsible for human misery in the 21st century and,
yeah,
mayhem and death. Yes. Yes.
and she kinda is like, I don't know. I was like, "You don't understand how much information over the next 10 years is gonna slowly become public knowledge to people that even wouldn't believe it right now because they're programmed by the media they consume, whether it's their TV or their Facebook or their TikTok or whatever."
I've got one last one, Sean. I know we're almost out of time.
Yep.
But folks, really, please, I'm not gonna yell this time. Look at the athletes dropping dead. Look at every major crowd situation that you see around the world where there's a soccer stadium where there's some riots, or like that crazy concert down in Houston where the young people all died because the crowd trampled them and that. When you have compromised health and virility or vitality, more people die in those situations when they're challenged by something because the body doesn't have enough left to overcome it. It's like aging but without getting older. You've been weakened by this Machiavelli type, all for some money, and your loved ones have been weakened or killed by this same person, and they're dying all around you, and he's actually responsible for it. And when that story finally gets told, Sean's prophecy will be proven correct, because the pin action from this is out of this world, off the charts. And it's happening every day. Look at these young people dropping dead. This didn't happen before.
Though it didn't happen before, and I don't know if we can get we got 3 years left with Trump. I don't know if we can get healthcare where we want it to go in 3 years. Actually, I don't it's just not possible, but if we could get whether it's I think it might be JD Vance or whether we can get Rubio or maybe we get Vance and then we get 8 years of Rubio and we get healthcare back to an actual free and open competitive market where people wanna fix problems and they're hungry for a customer at
Right.
a reasonable price
Somebody
at a
who's going to
reasonable
shop
price.
and give them their money. That's right, like the medical savings account thing. Yeah.
Then you're gonna see a lot of this stuff go away, but we've gotta and, JC and I are going to advocate for this as long as, we
As
still
long
have
as we
breath in our
breathe.
lungs.
As long as we
Yeah, as
breathe.
long as
Yeah.
we still have breath in our lungs, so
I want to give you one more example from current events as to what we're up against. Look at what had to happen for Comey, and now for fat ass Tish James to get indicted in Virginia for something that a Republican would have been indicted for by sundown on the day that the charges were announced. The entire bureaucracy was resistant to this, to the
mhm.
point where Trump had to pick a gal out of the White House and parachute her into Eastern Virginia as a prosecutor to basically do the indictments himself. All right. That is the sort of effort that's necessary to break all of these log jams. And in an area like health, the complexity of everything is so crazy that you just have to keep knocking off these incremental victories until you melt the ice cube. And you'd love to think that, oh, tomorrow it's going to be fixed. No, 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 no.
No, no,
You got
no.
your you got your pick out. You just need to keep swinging. That's the only
Yeah,
way it's gonna
you
get
gotta
fixed.
whack it because it is an iceberg that is the size of Saturn,
Yes,
the American healthcare system.
it's
Right.
more mendacious and more corrupt than the military industrial complex, and I mean, that's just beyond belief to me, but that's my life's work. There you go.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna spend the rest of our lives, trying to help. Hopefully it's JD, but JD, Marco, Pete Hicks, whoever is 48, 49, 50, to help them dismantle this and help. We'll bring you guys all along the way. Hey, great show tonight. It went a little different than I thought, only because we were hoping to bring up a guest, but I still have doom scroll about the early I am the science that I want to get to you on maybe part three
Okay.
of some of how and that we can compare that to different phases of I am the science, if that's okay
Well,
with you.
yeah, of course, and we'll work to get our guests in here. I mean, I have that little nurse that busted him with a 22% bonus for remdesivir. She has indicated some willingness to help us in the past, and Wesley, who's a vaccine injured individual, is also going to help us. He's a technology guy, but I think he's got too many blockers set up to join us tonight. But
Well, and I
we'll
yeah, and
get
I could
we'll
probably
fix
help
that.
him with that, but we weren't able to help him with that. And again, we have no problem with people coming in, guests coming in, where they go no video because maybe they still work in the healthcare system, or maybe they work in a
God
place
bless
that's
him.
that's
God bless
right.
him.
And
That
so we're totally okay with bringing people up voice mode only, no problem. So I appreciate it. Hey, let me close this one out. I'll leave the door open so that we can have a chat quickly afterwards.
okay.